Let's be honest, Alfred Hitchcock didn't just make thrillers. He made us uncomfortable, intrigued, complicit. And in the case of Rear Window, he may have taken things a little too far. Because when production wrapped on this now iconic murder mystery, the cast and crew didn't throw your typical Hollywood party. No champagne toast, no polite speeches. Instead, they gathered around something a little more personal. Something shaped like one of their co-stars' bodies, and yes, they ate it. But we'll come back to that. Released in 1954, Rear Window wasn't just a box office smash. It was an artistic turning point for Hitchcock. A $1 million production that ended up grossing over $36 million. It fused technical precision, razor-sharp storytelling, and a provocative subtext that critics are still unpacking today. And like the man himself, the film was just as obsessed with what people look like as it was with what they're hiding. At the center of the story is L.B. Jeff Jeffries, played by James Stewart, a war photographer stuck in a wheelchair. After an accident, Jeff passes his days spying on the neighbors in the apartment complex across the courtyard from his New York flat. He watches Miss Torso, the flirtatious dancer, Miss Lonely Hearts, the sad spinster, a couple with a dog, a struggling songwriter, some newlyweds, a whole cast of characters, unaware they're being watched by him and by us. That's Hitchcock's real magic trick. He doesn't just make the audience watch. He makes us feel guilty about liking it. And when Jeff starts to suspect that one of his neighbors, a traveling salesman named Lars Thorwald, may have murdered his wife, we don't just root for him, we become his accomplice. We squint with him. We analyze grainy shadows through a telephoto lens. And we sit there paralyzed, watching helplessly as his girlfriend climbs into a suspected killer's apartment. That girlfriend, by the way, is Lisa Fremont, played by Grace Kelly. Now let's be clear, Grace Kelly didn't just show up in this movie, she floated into it like a dream. Her first entrance is legendary. Dressed to the nines, bathed in soft light, leaning in for a kiss with a man who doesn't fully appreciate her. Even that kiss is cinematic. But Kelly wasn't the only woman catching eyes across the courtyard. Enter Georgine Darcy, who played Miss Torso. And no, she wasn't a professional dancer. Hitchcock specifically forbade her from taking lessons. He wanted her to move like a real girl practicing in her apartment, not a polished performer. So she did. In fact, she lived in her little apartment set for most of the shoot, lounging between takes in her costume, which, let's be real, was mostly lingerie. She relaxed, she danced, and the entire cast and crew watched, just like Jeff, just like us. Now here's where things start to blur. The film itself is a masterclass in suspense, shot entirely from Jeff's apartment except for a handful of critical scenes. The set, a technical marvel. Paramount's largest indoor construction. At the time, it took 50 men 2 months to build, complete with 31 real apartments, 12 of them fully furnished with electricity and running water. It was so massive, they had to dig out the soundstage floor to make space for the courtyard. What looked like Jeff's second floor window, actually ground level. And the lighting, unreal. Over 1,000 arc lights and 2,000 smaller ones simulated different times of day. The heat from them was so intense they once triggered the sprinkler system and flooded the set. Hitchcock just asked for an umbrella. This obsessive attention to detail extended to everything, even sound. Nearly all of it is diegetic. You hear what Jeff hears. Music floats across from the songwriter's window. A party rages upstairs. A woman sobs in silence. It's immersive, unsettling, and deeply human. Hitchcock had complete control, but he rarely spoke to his actors. James Stewart later said the most direction he ever got was, "The scene feels tired." Still, Stewart was fully dialed in. He even took profit participation instead of a salary, something rare at the time. That gamble paid off in spades, and Hitchcock loved working with him. In part because Stewart wasn't as fussy as Cary Grant, his other frequent leading man. Though Wendell Corey, who played the skeptical detective, claimed Stewart could still shut down a scene with one icy glare if he disagreed. But Rear Window wasn't just crafted by its stars. Its screenwriter, John Michael Hayes, was heavily influenced by Grace Kelly herself. She didn't exist in the original short story. Lisa was created from scratch, inspired by Kelly's elegance and strength. Hayes spent time with her before writing the role and even borrowed lines from his own wife to shape Lisa's personality. And while we're on inspiration, remember Lars Thorwald? The man suspected of murder. He was played by Raymond Burr, but modeled to look like producer David O. Selznick, whom Hitchcock hated. The glasses, the silver hair, even the hunched posture. It was Hitchcock's cinematic middle finger to an old rival. That kind of pettiness only makes the film better, honestly. But for all the technique, Rear Window also works on a deeper level. It's a movie about watching, about how we project our fears and desires onto the lives of others. Each neighbor Jeff spies on represents something about love, loneliness, or domestic life. The newlyweds who can't keep their hands off each other, the sad woman who eats dinner alone with imaginary dates, the dancer juggling suitors, the bickering couple, the dog lovers. All of them watched, dissected, judged, without ever knowing. Even Stella, Jeff's nurse, scolds him at first for being a peeping Tom, until she gets hooked herself. Lisa, too. The audience joins in. By the time Thorwald's dog dies and he doesn't react, we're suspicious right alongside them. The tension finally explodes in the film's third act, when Lisa breaks into Thorwald's apartment and is caught. Jeff watches helplessly, frozen in his chair. His only weapon? His camera's flashbulbs. He fires them one by one into Thorwald's face, blinding him in bursts of orange light. That color wasn't an accident. Hitchcock tested it by flashing real bulbs into the eyes of crew members. When they reported seeing orange spots, he told the effects team to match it. And then comes the fall. Jeff is thrown out the window, breaking his other leg. By the end of the film, he's even more immobilized than before, but something has shifted. Lisa is no longer trying to impress him. She's in casual clothes, reading a fashion magazine. There's a quiet acceptance in the air. The voyeur has come back to reality. Now about that body. As production wrapped, Hitchcock, never one for normal goodbyes, decided to celebrate in the most Hitchcockian way possible. Georgine Darcy, who had spent the shoot dancing, lounging, and being ogled in her apartment window, was presented with a cake. But not just any cake. It was sculpted in the shape of her own body, curves and all, anatomically accurate, and the cast and crew devoured it. Seriously, that's not movie legend. That actually happened. It was part prank, part tribute, and 100% bizarre. But it fits. In a film all about objectification, detachment, and projection, it's almost poetic that the set wrapped with the crew literally consuming the image of the woman they'd spent a month watching. Creepy? Yes. But also kind of perfect. And it cements Rear Window not just as a brilliant thriller, but as a film that knew what it was doing, down to the very last bite. Now it's time to hear from you. If you had to live in one of those apartments across Jeff's courtyard, whose story would you want to be part of? Miss Lonely Hearts? The dancer? The dog lovers? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a look behind the scenes of Hollywood's greatest classics.